Hi, Bonnie. How are
Good.
you?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Good. Hi,
Hi,
Lenore.
hi, Bonnie.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
So we'll give it a few minutes for people to pop in. What's been going on with you too and with your writing?
I've been kind of busy. I am spending time every day now that I've retired, so that really helps a lot,
Yeah.
Yeah, just having the time.
And how are you liking retirement? Is it still going
Oh, I
strong?
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Great.
Yeah, just the time. I think that's the biggest thing for me is not feeling like I have to do everything in an urgent, rushed way,
Right.
that I
Yeah.
can take my time doing things and having the time to do things. Yeah.
That's great. That's so
Yeah,
nice.
it's a good feeling. It really is.
I can't wait for that.
I'm
Yeah.
laughing because I'm in retirement and I still do everything in an urgent and rushed
Oh,
way.
Oh,
It never goes away.
that
oh,
might be
well,
you.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
think it's me.
Yes. Well,
When I was working, my calendar was just jammed every day with meetings. And
oh yeah.
by the end of the day, I was like mentally shot. And
Sure. Yeah.
so, it left little mental energy for writing or anything else for that matter. In fact,
Yeah.
I said to my sister yesterday, I'm reading so much more
Oh yeah.
because by the end of the day, I'm not so exhausted. Before, I would try to read at night and I'd fall asleep invariably, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's been just really nice, just that little thing.
Yeah, I love to start my day reading, and
Hmm.
that's something you can do when you're not rushing off. So,
Yes. Yeah, I've
yeah,
done that as well with my coffee in the morning. It's quite
yep.
lovely.
I'm so glad. That's really
Yeah.
great to hear. That is.
Yeah, it's
Hi, Mary
good.
Ellen. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
very well.
I'm in
Morning.
England, so
Ah, that's cool.
yeah, I'm
What are you
going to
doing there?
I have a conference. I'm actually presenting about Martha, my person. So
Amazing.
yeah, so it's but I got in this morning. You know how when you come
Oh
you
my.
fly all night, So I was trying to stay up today and I said, okay, if my meeting at it's 5 o'clock here and I'll do a
Yes.
little this and that. So I'm trying to get turned around. So tomorrow we're going before the conference goes, I'm going with some friends to Hampton Court and Kew Gardens. So
Oh,
should be fun.
nice.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
We visited Kew Gardens when we were there in March, and it was
I
really
know you were there.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Did you
was
go on
nice.
that forest walk, the raised walk?
No, no, I was visiting a friend who actually has some mobility issues. And so she
Hmm.
had reserved one of the mobility scooters
Oh, nice. Yeah.
and we actually did walk a lot. And it was I don't know which day it was. It was toward the end of our trip, but it's huge. You just cover a lot of
Yeah,
territory.
I've never been there. I've read about it in all, the novels that you read, but yeah, no, I'm excited. So, yeah.
Good. Well, I'm so honored that you're here because I know when you get there, the travel, like, I don't know about you, but I don't sleep on a flight because it's only really 7 hours maybe. And so 6 or 7, like, you're so excited. And by the time you would settle into sleep, you're landing. And and then
Yeah.
it's morning and it's like you're tired, but you got to sort of power through the day. So thank you for joining us.
Well, you're a young person. When I got on the plane, it was like 9 o'clock, and then it was an
Uh-huh.
hour feeling stuff. Like 9 o'clock's my bedtime. So I
Okay.
was like, my eyes were shut, and I didn't eat the meal or any. I mean, I just was
Oh,
like, I was done. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I slept, but it was a heavy doze. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's everybody. People are popping in.
Lisa.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful time and good luck with your presenting. That's really
Yeah.
exciting. Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
So we are going to get started. I'm sure others will be joining, but I just want to honor our time. Hello, everybody. So let's start by checking in. We're sort of at the halfway point in this program. And so I want to ask you guys how you're feeling about the progress that you're making with your book. Are you where you hoped you'd be? Um, what obstacles may have delayed your progress, like has anything shifted for you? And so, I'm sure each of you had a reason for joining the book writers community. And I don't know if that reason has changed, but where are you in the process? And How are you feeling now? Are you ahead? Are you behind? Anything you want to bring up that we can address?
I'll start.
Yeah.
I'd like to say I wish I was a little further ahead, but I still have hopes of catching up now.
Uh-huh.
I think that what I'm kind of working through right now is the order of chapters in my book. I have quite a bit written,
Hmm.
although being a first draft, I know that there's probably a lot of it that's going to get cut out too,
Uh-huh.
but trying to figure out order of chapters and order of content.
Okay. So, Bonnie, when you started this process, did you envision like a timeline or did you have an outline that you felt was chronological or was
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah, it's pretty chronological. Yeah, it is. And of course that helps, but then there's pieces of it that I have to go back and say, well, when did this happen?
Hmm.
And also, looking at each chapter and making sure that each piece of it really fits, that it flows from one chapter to the next, that
Sure.
I don't know if I'm saying it the right way, but kind of that it's sequential, that it makes sense.
Sure. So something to think about is, a lot of times, in a memoir, we think it should be chronological, but at the same time, you might start with the end, like the fact that you lost your husband. And so then
Mhm.
you're telling the story. And so I feel like one good thing that can guide the order is what is the transformation that you want to take place in the story? So not just how things happened, but the storytelling. What is
Mhm.
sort of like where should it begin and what change in you or in the reader or both should happen by the end of the book? And so that might be something worth free writing about so that you
Okay.
could take a look at that. Like, what is the big pivotal transformation in this story? And
Okay.
maybe it's realizing that um, you could have this meaningful, rich life even without your husband. Like you wish it hadn't happened. You wish he were there with you, but wow, look at all the things you've been able to do, or
Hmm.
that you're surprised by that.
Hmm.
Or, I don't know. I mean, think about what it could be.
Yeah.
Then maybe you organize all of the sections to lead to that transformation.
It's a good idea. The other thing is, and I think you and I've talked a little bit about this before, is trying to integrate some of the backstory within the chronological pieces as well.
Right. One of the things I was noticing when I was reading your submission this month, Bonnie, which I've done because I was traveling, as I love hours on the plane that I can get ahead of everything. But is I was wondering there were some details in there that were familiar to me, and so I didn't know where this chapter would come in the book, and I wondered if that information would already be known by the reader, or if it was new information. Because again, like I said, I don't know where this chapter comes with regard to others.
Right.
And that is something to think about, when I was putting together my essay collection, which is different because they're freestanding essays. There were a few essays that referenced details in my life, and it became repetitive. And so, like when my husband was looking at the order of the essays, he's like, "Well, you kind of already said this. Do you
Mhm.
want both essays in the collection?" And
Yeah.
that was interesting. In a memoir, you could say, are both chapters necessary, or maybe the information needs to come in the first chapter and you can take it out of the second one. So,
Right.
because you do want that flow, you want to know that the
Yeah.
reader is with you and has those details too. So,
Yeah. True.
yeah. Thanks for those questions, Bonnie. Let me know what happens when you free write and what you come up
Thanks for
with.
your thoughts.
Yeah. Anybody else? Welcome to everybody. We're talking about, we're at the halfway mark in the program and thinking about, are you where you wanted to be? Are you ahead? Are you behind? What obstacles have arisen? What reasons brought you into the book writers community and are they the same or have they shifted? So just sort of taking stock. So anybody else who wants to weigh in?
I will.
Lisa, yeah.
Um, those are a lot of questions. Okay, so I'm a little behind where I thought I'd be. I did not expect my brother to pass, which really did interfere with you know, I mean, life happens,
Everything?
right?
Yeah.
Life happens, death happens. I mean, it just is the way of
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah.
So, I did finish my first draft of my manuscript, which I've reported here.
Yep.
And then I just had to have some space from it.
Sure.
And so I'm glad I did that, because now I have a very renewed enthusiasm
Mm-hmm.
vision, and I've made a revision blueprint. I've gone through the manuscript about 3 times.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, just, high level,
Mhm.
because it has to be about half its current size. So there's no point in editing finely at this
Okay.
point, because who knows what's going to be still there and what's going to be gone.
What's the size? How many words?
Or it's 135,000 words. It's 400
Yeah,
pages.
it's long. Okay.
Yeah. But I see, by going through it so many times, I see one of my many flaws is that, well, I mean, they just hit you in the face when you read it. I mean, they say
Yep.
that without any rancor, it's just learning, right?
Yep.
Is that I write about, well, thinking about doing something, planning doing something, preparing to do it, and then doing it, I just really don't need all of that in there. So,
Probably
there's
true.
it's just a lot of real refinement.
Okay.
The other thing that you were just talking about that resonated with me is that there are things that are very repetitive that can be summarized,
Mhm.
that I wouldn't have known that had I not written them all out, so I
Mhm.
do trust the process. Like, I really believe in the process of getting it all down and then playing with it, working
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
One suggestion that was made to me from someone I really trust
Uh-huh.
is to consider changing to present tense and
Okay.
writing in the present tense, which I'm kind of excited about. Little
Okay.
daunting, but
Sure.
I'm kind of excited about it. So I'm going to
Okay.
play with that a little bit.
Okay.
My goal is, I go to Lake Michigan on the 19th of July
Okay.
for about 5 weeks. So my goal is
Amazing.
to have a, structure
Uh-huh.
of my second draft, and then to spend time at the lake
Mhm.
with more refinement, editing, and really trying to get a pretty good second draft by the end of the summer.
Great. You can
And
do that.
so, yeah, I think so. I think it's
Yeah.
doable. It'll take some dedication and some work, but I feel up to it.
Good.
And I like the discipline of being
Yeah.
part of a writer's, for me, it's the discipline and the identity
Mhm.
of being a writer.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
heard someone, I was watching a webinar this morning, who said, you're artists and writers. And
Yes.
it was a very interesting webinar about borrowing creative process cues from the visual arts in
Mm.
terms of, and he referenced an artist named Mark Bradford, who collects all this paper and emulsifies it and uses that as paint instead of using paint.
Okay.
And the question was, as a writer, what do you collect and
Mhm.
how do you use it? Which I
Mm.
found very interesting to think about. And
Yeah.
so being part of this group is in reinforcing that creative identity, the identity as a writer, and really the ambition of being
Good.
a writer. So
That's awesome. Okay.
it's cool.
You have a plan, and I find that revision, while it can be daunting, is faster because you have something to work with. So it's much easier to work with something already on the page than it is to create a whole story on a blank page. So I
And
find the revisions move fast.
I feel like the plot's there. I feel like the character arc is there. I mean, is going through it so many times and
Mhm.
creating a blueprint. I love my spreadsheets. So I
Yep.
created a very detailed blueprint, kind of scene by scene or major scene
Yes.
by major scene,
Yep.
assigned them a priority, kind of, I feel like following that blueprint
Hmm.
is a really good way for me to work.
Great.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And that'll be great to be at Lake Michigan.
Yes, it will.
Yeah.
I love it there.
Yes. Awesome. Anybody else want to check in about where you are? Um, sort of halfway point. Anybody?
I will.
Mary
I
Ellen and then William. Yeah.
So first of all, I want to say I really liked what you sent out, Lynn, for the lesson for today about really focusing on the book that you want to write, not the book that everybody else. So that kind of is good because it kind of gets me
Yep.
thinking back to what I want to write. But also just so I feel like I'm on schedule. I made a schedule for myself and I'm trying to stick to that schedule, but it involves a big chunk of time available for rewriting and editing, which I know I have to do kind of along the lines that was just being mentioned. But I also just want to say I had a really interesting experience of now that I'm not, the semester's over, I'm not teaching. I am reading more as well. Bonnie said she's able to read more, and I'm reading more. And I'm reading biographies because that's what I'm writing. And I'm reading this biography it's funny. It's a biography that is well researched and interesting information, but it's not like grabbing me. I'm reading it
Okay.
because I want the, and I know that's more my tendency because as an academic, I'm kind of like so it's very helpful to me because I'm thinking like, what's missing? Why aren't I being grabbed along? And that's really helpful to me. And actually what I came up with is that there's no emotional turning points. You were just talking about the arc. So I went back to I was thinking back to my character and thinking, what were the emotional turning points, and to make sure to build up to those and use those, because I think that makes the story more dramatic as opposed to just kind of a recounting of the life. I don't want to just recount the life. I want it to be have some drama, which is there, and that's important. So
Yeah, that's great. I think you're right. The emotion is what makes the story interesting and relatable. When people have very human reactions, we're like, oh, I've had that, or I can see how I would feel in that situation. It's interesting. I have a new student in one of my classes that I'm teaching who is writing about a time when she was deciding her career and her parents were not supportive of it, and she had to find a way to get to the university program that would help her get there. And it was just told very like matter of fact. And of course, this is many years ago. This woman is older. But I said, well, how did you feel? Did you feel angry or hurt or betrayed that like you were this teenager and they weren't helping you? And I feel like the emotion would transform the story. And so I think that's super important. And I know it's hard to do with Martha because you don't know her, you can't ask her. Um, so you have to sort of assume or read between the lines. And what you have to work with are the concrete facts, which I get that
right.
makes it a little drier, but it's great to think about that emotional turning point so that you can hinge the story on that, make it a little more human. Yeah, awesome. William, did you want to go?
Yeah, there were two things that I kind of realized recently. There was a point in the story that I'm writing now where I had an idea where I could kind of bring in a point that would create more insight into the past.
Mhm.
And I found myself, you had mentioned this before about the book telling us what we need and what the characters want. And I had that moment and I realized it, and I'm like, son of a, like I wanted so much more in that moment. And I kept trying to like have fun and rewrite it. I'm like, no, this is, you're telling me this. I want more and I can't figure out a way. You're right. I'm just going to leave it. And so I had that moment.
That's
So it was
great.
fun. I laughed at myself, but I remember I thought
Yeah.
of you when you said that, like just move on,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
The book tells you what it needs to be. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. And it'll tell me if it needs more later. Right
Right.
now, it only needs something, just a quick insight and move on.
Exactly.
Um, and I'm at a point now where in my daughter's diagnosis where I write a blog. And
Okay.
I did this back in the day.
Okay.
And so I'm trying to understand the best way for the book to tell me what it needs and how much of it needs. Does it need all of it, a
Uh-huh.
snippet, an excerpt? Like what kind of space is that? And through this writing process, I found myself being my most creative when
Nice.
I totally stop
Uh-huh.
and just let it marinate
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
just ruminate and think about it and, kind of
Mhm.
just do that, which is, it keeps you kind of our halfway point. That's what brought this point up, is that
Yeah.
it's taking me longer than I anticipated, which I don't know what I really was expecting for it to be done. But
Yeah.
I'm more creative when I let it ruminate. And I think that was a really important point for me to understand
Hmm.
and not force myself into sitting there and staring. And sometimes I do, but
Yeah.
sometimes I also just want to have fun thinking about it.
Yeah.
and what it could be or what it can't be, or I want to
Hmm.
be creative in a way that other writers may not do that and
Yeah.
spin things in ways and stuff like that. So I'm finding a lot of enjoyment, and that's kind of where I'm at the last couple of days. I haven't wrote, but I'm just enjoying the fact that like you can do whatever you want, however you want, and just
Yeah,
enjoy that moment. So
for
yeah,
sure.
just wanna mention
It's interesting, William, my book that's coming out tomorrow, was in my head for 18 months. And I was, life gets in the way. I mean, you have young children, people have careers or older children or no children, and they have other things going on, travel, whatever it is. And life gets in the way. And it's hard to write when you have all these different things, because it doesn't seem as urgent of a priority. So it took me 18 months before I sat down to write and just poured out. And it was like I was playing with it in my head and just letting it form. And it was a lot easier to write, to be honest. Now, I don't know that I would like to be that busy as I was then, but there is something to be said for letting the idea develop. There really is. Yeah. Okay, so this week, what we're going to talk about is, as we said, writing the book that you want to write. And I want to, I mean, I sent a pretty lengthy lesson. We're not going to go over all of that. We're going to work a little bit on your author brand today, but I want to preface it by saying something about, it's funny. I don't know. Did I tell you guys about the life list? Did I mention that in our last call? No? The Life List was a book that I read years ago and that now it was just made into a Netflix movie. And so I watched it and I pulled the book off the shelf. And it's basically a young woman loses her mother prematurely. And her mother says that she's not going to get her inheritance until she fulfills the life list that she made when she was 11. And the point is basically that the mother sees that she's gone on an adult path that really doesn't speak to who she is. And she wants her to get back to who she is at the core. And so I went after I watched it and it reminded me of it. I was going out for dinner with my husband and I went an hour early and I got a beer and I sat outside and I said, I'm going to make a life list. Now I'm in my 50s, so I'm not 11, imagining like all the big things that'll happen. And I'm happy to say some of my life list things have happened, so that's great. But what would be the life list today? And it was a lot shorter, but one of the things on it was write a book just for the sake of writing a book, not to publish it, not for anybody's reaction. And I still might, but just for the act of writing it. And I sat and I thought about it because I think you guys would all agree it's a very different endeavor when you're just writing it for the joy of writing, right? Not for some goal of I'm going to change the world with this, or I want somebody to be, impacted by it, or I want everyone to love my writing, all of which are valid and all of which I feel at one point or another in my book process. But the idea of writing a book just to fulfill my desire to write and to enjoy that process was like so liberating. And I say that because I want you guys to think about, I kind of want you to adopt that when you're writing this, even though you may have a goal of publishing your book and winning awards and, impressing audiences, et cetera, all of which may happen. But right now, if you can embrace, even for the next 6 months, even as we talk about these author brand things, when you sit down to write, just I'm here to enjoy this. I wonder how it would change. I wonder how what appears on the page might be stronger. I don't know. Maybe it won't. Maybe you need that motivation and that's totally fine. But I just put it out there because I found it to be sort of a revolutionary idea for myself. And I think about, can I write the next book just to enjoy writing it, just to see if I can fulfill it for myself, you know? I think we have to think about, I mean, you do want to think about your audience, but you also just want to write the book that you need to write. And this book of mine that's coming out tomorrow sort of straddles genres. And one of the early ARC readers said something about that, like, "Oh, I love mixed genre books." And I'm like, "Is it a mixed genre? Like, did I do that? Like, I didn't try to. I just wrote a book." And yes, we have to categorize it because we live in a sales economy and we want people to find it. And if they don't know how to understand it, they're not going to choose it. I get it. I get it. But I feel like, yes, first write the book you have to, because it's going to be a better book if you're really into it, if you have a lot of passion for it. Any thoughts about this, or does this strike a chord with anybody? Yeah, Alicia.
That really hits home to me. Absolutely, because I'm kind of going back and forth because it's a memoir and it's all personal, right?
Yep.
And so I have to really write this for myself, and I'm thinking of it more of like as a legacy,
Yeah.
for me and for my kids, which is
Sure.
also kind of making me rewrite and rethink about the voice and audience and
Yep.
how my kids are going to read it
Hmm.
and then who's going to read it. So it's kind of all together, even
Yeah.
though you're thinking about yourself, which a lot of people would call selfish, but actually if you have to put the, your air mask on first, right? So I
Yeah.
feel like if you really focus and you find that passion and the creativity that William, you were saying, I really hit home with that too. Like if you just kind of meditate on that and marinate, as you say, and kind of sit with it and say, what makes you happy in this moment and actually being present, I really feel like it comes more naturally and
Hmm.
then it hits people more naturally too, do you know? So it's not
Yes.
forced sales, it's
Hmm.
more the organic way. And I think
Yeah.
that's a lot better. Yeah.
I agree. I'm glad it resonates. Yeah, I think you have to be courageous, you guys. I think you have to say, like none of us, myself included, are New York Times bestselling authors. And I mean, I've won awards and whatever, but I'm not a household name. And I'm writing books because I love writing books. And it makes me happy when people read my story and resonate with it or connect or find something that's meaningful to them. But, I'm doing this for me first. And I think you guys have to as well. I don't think it's selfish. I think it's one of the reasons that you were put on this earth, that you have this talent. You can bring insights through storytelling to people. And one of the, I think, negatives of the current publishing industry, and maybe it's always been this way, is that there are ways things have always been done. And so whenever you're doing something differently, it's met with um, hesitation or, disdain because it's unfamiliar. And yet, there are all kinds of experimental writers and genres have emerged because people have experimented, and that was really courageous, brave. I think the best art comes from changing up the model and taking risks. And so I think, yes, I can coach you on how to get published, how to choose how to publish. Your work can get out there regardless. There will be an audience for it. But it may not look the way you think it'll look. And every time you're looking for somebody else to give you validation for the book, you're basically writing it for them. And when you write for yourself, I do think the writing is stronger. I think when you're passionate about the story you're telling. So when you believe in your topic and you think that it's so important that it needs to be out there, it's a stronger book. I just do. So I know there's a lot that's going to conflict with that because yes, you still need feedback. You can't just write something and have it be raw and say this is the most brilliant thing ever and screw anybody who gives me feedback. That's not what I'm saying. Um, but the writing process, the creation process, it needs to come from here. It really does. Yeah. Okay. Any questions, thoughts before we go on to author branding stuff? Anybody? Okay. I sent you an author branding worksheet, and I would like to give you a little bit of time to fill it out and just think about these things, which is the total opposite of what we've been talking about. But the reason is that I want, when you go through this worksheet, um, at the end of it, my idea is that I want you to be able to write a sentence about who you are as an author, like what people can expect from something you write. Does everybody have the worksheet that I sent? Yeah. Okay. So I want to give you like 20 minutes to like play with these questions. Um, some of them you may not have answers to. Other questions may come up as you are filling it out. So just see where it takes you. Be loose with it. And then we will come back at like, it's 26 after, we'll come back at 46 after, and we'll sort of debrief, see what you've come up with, and see if we can write a pithy author statement. So, any questions or anything? Okay, have fun. I'll be here and I'll see you at 46. Well, people are popping back on very quickly. So is that good or bad? It's time to come back, you guys. So, how did that go? And what did you come up with? Did you start to get a sense of who you are as a writer and what your work has to offer people? I got an eye roll from Jeannie.
I always struggle with that elevator pitch. It's just scary. And what I wrote doesn't even make sense to me. So how could it to a reader?
Tell me, like, what'd you write?
I wrote, and this is really crazy, so please bear with me. I write books about magic, love, and the intersection where human folly meets choice. Wallow in regret or make the change gnawing from within. It's just so
I think you could end it after
nonsensical.
choice, and it's
Okay.
great. So say it, so read it again, ending it there.
Okay. I write books about magic, love, and the intersection where human folly meets choice.
Done. What do you
Um,
think? How does it feel?
it I think it sounds better than whatever I was trying to do because that sounded really vague and nonsensical.
This is you. You did write that. We just made it tighter, right?
I thought
That
it
is
needed to be
fantastic. I think that's
really.
really interesting.
Oh my gosh, thank you so
I love
much.
it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Fun. Did you learn anything about yourself, Jeannie, in looking at some of the questions?
And
What did
I did a little bit. I guess I'm so certain of what genre I'm writing in and what I want that
you-
I didn't necessarily discover anything new.
Mhm.
Just, and I think I've said this before, but after every one of these meetings, I walk away feeling just so certain that this is where I'm supposed to be and I'm finally doing what I want
That's
and need to
amazing.
do. And yeah, I
That's
mean, just
amazing.
talking about it, I get chills. So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
You know, I was talking with a friend yesterday. Even though I work in marketing, I'm not great at marketing myself. And so I have people coach me because I need the help. And she was pointing out how there's like three ways that people build their presence, especially on social media, but in other ways. So one is the author persona. So like, who are you behind the books? The second one is all book related. So it's your books and it's books you read and other authors you hold up and that kind of thing. And the third one is all about world building. And so, like in your genre, Jeannie, you could be doing that. You could be just like very niche audience, but talking about the world you build and the characters in it and like people connecting over that. And that's very much for fantasy, and sometimes sci-fi, but like those are sort of the three perspectives of marketing that authors take. I would say I'm more of an author persona one, and it's something I have to work on to be totally transparent. But I think that when you can start to talk about how you do it and why you do it and the way you do it, it becomes much easier. And then people know how to relate to you and they know how to engage with your books too.
It's really interesting that you said that because I really, really want to start a Substack, which I'm just procrastinating on day in and day out.
Uh-huh.
And I keep reading all of these things about how to start and what to write about. And I stumbled across something and I can send it to the whole group
Mhm.
that said you should focus either on just what you said, either who you are or what what's behind your stories, like an element of your
Yeah.
stories. And
Yeah.
but the way that you said it just made it sound clearer. Like,
I can't take credit. It was my friend who was coaching me, but I love it. I'm glad it works. I mean, it's interesting with the Substack, there are people on Substack who are writers who write about being writers. And I don't want to be one of those. I do talk about my books, but I talk more about who I am. And I feel like my friend was telling me that that didn't translate to my social media. So I was a little defensive, but I heard her and I'll work on it. So it's something to think about. Like it's when you are, and the first half of this call, I'm saying, write the book you want to book. Who cares? Write the book you want to write, but who cares what anybody thinks? But then I'm saying to you, okay, but you have to engage with them. And both are true, so I still think you're going to have readers and they should know how to interact with you. And so, you're passionate about this book, but probably you guys are going to write more than one book. I mean, many of you will. Maybe some of you won't, but people get bit by the writing bug and they just keep going. So, you know. Anyway, thank you, Jeannie. Who else wants to share? Laura. Yes.
So I've done this exercise before and I've struggled. I don't even a lot of times don't even really understand why I'm writing the book or what I'm trying to say. However, to your point, Jeannie, I've been doing a Substack, Fearless Authenticity, for almost a year. I started it in August. And that has helped me. So doing the exercise this time, because I write personal essays,
Okay.
just about my struggle to be authentic and what I've learned in research and that kind of thing. Doing this exercise this time, I'm very clear about what this book, that it's following that same line, that
Mhm.
there's this heroine in my book who doesn't really know who she is, and she's doing she's discovering family, and she's discovering secrets, and she's discovering all of these things, and she discovers herself in the process too. So doing that Substack weekly for almost a year has been a wonderful way to get to know myself better. And I get a lot of feedback from people that say, oh my gosh, this makes sense to me, this resonates, or whatever. But it's been a way to get to know myself better. And I just enjoy doing it. I'm not doing it for any other reason. So
That's
I
awesome.
would say step in and do that
Mhm.
and see where it takes you.
That's super cool. Jeannie, you're going to say
Sounds
something?
really exciting. I was actually going to tell Laura that a couple of weeks ago, one of her pieces showed up in my email because I subscribe to a couple of different Substacks.
Uh-huh.
And Laura, your post was the one that just kind of popped up, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know her. It
That's
was so
awesome.
exciting.
That's super cool. I love that. And Laura, as you were talking, I was thinking your book is about fearless authenticity. Maybe that is your brand as an author, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. That's
Yeah.
great.
I
So
feel I
exciting.
feel more planted in it than I ever have. So
Good. Yay. Awesome. Cool. Who else and of course, if you struggled with this, there's nothing wrong with that either. So feel free to share that if you need to. That's real. Yes, Alicia.
So I have a marketing background, so it kind of was a little bit easier for me. And I actually can't be any other way than I am.
Mhm.
So I have masked my whole life, and I have turned 40, and I'm like, well, there's no turning back. This is what it is. You're getting what you're getting, you know? So I kind of have given it the, I don't care attitude, and it's kind of liberating.
Nice.
And I think, how many billion people there are in the world. There's
Yeah.
gonna be a following. Everybody has a cult, look at the weird, there's so many cult people that just follow one person. I figure like, um, who I or who I, flow to is for a reason, you
Yeah.
know? And so because I'm so different, that is for that person. And then I feel like it would be more of an authentic connection. So
Yeah.
I'm not really stressed about that. And I've kind of been building my brand already. I have a Substack, I have an Instagram, I have a landing page already, and it's like the Mudsies mission based off of what I'm going to do for the nonprofit. And so it kind of is an umbrella already following under there. But I've actually stopped because of like the whole public arena space right now. And I'm kind of afraid to talk about anything.
Mm.
So it's a
Yeah.
really interesting time for me. And it's kind of weird. So I'm like trying to force myself to write about something that for a little bit I was first sharing to the world, and now I've stopped. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard. So that's an interesting thing, is like, I don't know if you experience with that, is branding authenticity where it's kind of not a safe space for a lot for some, you know. It's an interesting perspective to think about it that way.
You know, there's scary times, and we're not going to get into politics, but I think that, you know, all the feelings are real, and there's nothing wrong with taking a pause and just writing your book and seeing where you land in a month or two or three or whatever. I am sort of a hopeless optimist, and I feel like, you know, whenever the world turns ugly, it eventually turns pretty again. I just believe in people, and so I do feel like in time it won't be as dangerous to be yourself. And that's just me. I don't have any science to back that up. So, you know, I guess I can't look at any other way because the opposite would be terrifying. So, you know, but it's okay to take a little break and come back to it. Yeah. Anybody, any last comment before we close for today?
If I
Anybody?
could, I would just like to speak to this notion of authenticity, which I think is really, really fantastic. Of course, I write in fantasy, and my main character is male, but he's surrounded by all of these females who are very strong and confident.
Mhm.
And I was reading that fantasy novels are always about a female character who's, really desired by another male character. And I just thought to myself, why does it always have to be this way and not perhaps that way? Do
It
you know?
doesn't.
So I love this conversation that, just in being who you are, you will attract the right people.
Exactly. I think more so than if you're writing to please others. I really do, you know, and I think that's a good note to end on. So, if you guys have questions as you go through the author brand worksheet or whatever, you know where to reach me. Otherwise, I'll see you in a couple weeks. And thanks for being here. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.